was incredibly gracious of you, and I'm sincerely grateful to you for standing by me for the last year and a half. You know, when I left, it's very, very difficult to convey how lonely it was at the time. Even though many Canadians like yourselves, everyday Canadians, reached out and wished me well. I like to joke with some of my crew, in the summer of 2020, in the summer of 2021, I would not be invited to weddings. Like, I had friends that would get married and I wouldn't be invited. And so to identify, and many of the people that actually work on our effort were not themselves at the time very much materially affected. Those were just people that believed in right versus wrong, and they just wanted to do right by people, and that's how we put together a skeleton crew that for the last year and a half has been helping us to fight the lockdowns, the passports, the mandates. And that's why we're here, and that's why we continue. And that's why I ask you to support my campaign and join our effort and work with me at the very least until every single Canadian has every single one of their rights fully restored. Yeah. That's it. And beyond that, it's not just our individual rights, it's Canada's democracy that I feel is being eroded. It's being irreparably eroded before our eyes. And it's a very, very sad thing, because I think that without democracy, we don't have anything. Whether it's our ability to, pursue economic interest, or raise a family peacefully, or worship, everything can be compromised when democracy isn't there. And I know a thing or two about democracy. I was born in the former Soviet Union, something that many of you know. We didn't leave until the whole thing almost collapsed in 1989. That's when a lot of Eastern Europeans gained their freedom. And that's why I know how precious democracy is and how tenuous it is. And in the Soviet Union, you could not leave beyond communist walls. And so for me, right now, to watch more than 3.5 billion Canadians that are landlocked, that are unable to leave beyond Canadian walls, seemingly. In my view, that's something that should upset not just 3.5 million Canadians, that should upset 35 million Canadians. Yeah. And because I think that our mobility rights are not just charter rights, they're human rights. Your ability to peacefully move is a human right. And it's being abridged right now. Same with mandates. I've always felt that to make someone choose between their ability to put food on the table and their personal choice is simply inhumane. That's why I brought the only legislation that I'm familiar with today in Canada, the Jobs and Jobs Act, to protect workers against workplace mandates, and shame on the Doug Ford government for voting it down. Yeah. So, and look, I'd like to encourage you to go beyond what some of my competitors do. You can't just stomp your chest and yell the word freedom. We're in a very complex environment. A lot of Canadians, they don't know what to believe, they don't know what to think. Because no one believes anyone anymore, and no one hears anyone anymore. That's the type of division that Justin Trudeau created. But I think that we need to articulate a sensible proposition. If you just look at my social media yesterday, I'm not sure if it was on Twitter or if I posted it everywhere else. A big study written up in Forbes saying, literally, the vax provides 2 to 3 weeks protection against infection, right? And we know now, I think the booster that is, we know now from the chief medical officer, we know now from the manufacturer itself, that 2 shots offer minimal protection against infection. So any suggestion that someone's risk of transmission is lower because the risk of infection is lower is now completely out the window. No one is putting anyone at risk. No one's putting anyone at risk. I think it's a hateful proposition that we have to clearly oppose. And how do we gain our democracy back? Through the most precious right of them all. And in my view, that is the freedom of speech. freedom of speech is the holy grail of all rights, because through speech we defend all other rights. And we're seeing a remarkable erosion of speech in Canada. Look at what happened to us. We're banned from the public square, from gathering. We're being censored on the internet. Our regulated professionals are being censored. And we know what the line is. Okay, don't incite violence. And don't demonize an identifiable group of people like Justin Trudeau does, so as to potentially, subject them to harm. That's hate. So here's what I propose. Number one, I'm going to bring a different culture to Ottawa. It's always going to err on the side of freedom of speech, even if it comes at a detriment to my own self-interest. You live by democracy, you die by democracy. It's just... I am going to, first and foremost, we need to defend regulated professionals. I think that if doctors and regulated health professionals had the ability to speak out freely and were not afraid of losing their licenses or being penalized, we would have been out of this mess years ago. Okay, so I know that some of them are provincially regulated, but I'm going to bring a very strong culture to Ottawa. I will play hardball with any province that does not allow for speech. Second, we have to rein in the technological monopolies. Okay, so I love small business, medium business, big business. I think that, the ability to earn a living and pursue your dreams and grow your small business is a wonderful thing, and I don't want to hinder anyone from doing that. But we now have technological monopolies that are effectively the public square. If Facebook is the public square, it should behave like the public square. And certainly not enjoy protection from liability like it does. If they were supposed to allow us to post content, but if they now filter content, and if they tell us what they believe is true or not, then we need to redefine our relationship. And so I'm going to do that through the Bureau of Competition. I'm very, very determined to preserve our speech online. And that includes fiddling with the algorithm too. Like, we need to do some serious thinking here. And finally, most importantly, you don't have free speech when you don't have free and independent media. It's impossible. Okay? And media, that's one of the cornerstones of our democracy, because we count on them to objectively cover government. But how is media going to cover government objectively when the government signs the media's paycheck? It's absurd. So that has to end. And it's not just, so I'm going to go further. So first and foremost, yes, of course I'm going to defund the CBC. That's going to be a great day. And second of all, I will end all bailouts and all subsidies to all of them. Canadians can't even imagine, it wasn't just the $600 million initially that Justin Trudeau did. Just before the election, he did another round of $63 million. So, and finally, media is now the biggest advertiser. Sorry, government is now the biggest advertiser in town. And there's a rule that, I used to sell ad space for a community newspaper when I was an older teenager. And I remember the trick. You sell the guy a half a page, and in the other half a page, you give him an interview. That's what happens. So we have to end this dependency by media on government. No more self-serving ads. None of this insanity that we've seen on benches, on bridges. It's irresponsible, and it thwarts our democracy. So I'm going to end all dependency by media on government to give us free speech, to give us an opportunity to be heard. Beyond democracy, there are a couple of files I want to talk about very, very quickly. So first, I think that our natural resources are a blessing. And I'm not going to let oil and gas be canceled. And it's good for our strategic interest and our economic bottom line, and it's also great for the planet. Because Canadians can derive energy cleaner and safer than any other nation in the world. And I want to diversify our energy ability. I want to refine in Canada. We definitely should be transporting by pipeline and not by rail. It's a lot safer to transport by pipe than by train. We saw what happened in Quebec a couple of years ago. What a disaster. And not just that, I like mining. There's an insatiable need in precious metals, precious minerals. And it's good for our remote communities, northern communities, our indigenous communities, and we can strike the right balance. We can be reasonable. But I'm not going to shoot ourselves in the foot. And that also means that taxing you $10 at the gas pump, you know, for the carbon tax, knowing that it's not going to move global temperatures, I'm going to end that. And I'm going to speak about that clearly. I'm not afraid to speak about that. Canada emits less than 1.5% of all global emissions. Even if you were to cut all of them, there's no evidence that would make a material difference in the climate. And we should not be afraid. We're blessed with so much tree in Canada. We potentially absorb most of it, and I love planting trees. And I'm happy, I mean it. I love trees, I love Canadian forest, I love Canadian water, I love Canadian air. Let's focus on material things that we can do, keep it clean, grow more of it, absorb even more CO2. But I'm not going to compromise the competitiveness of our country or make life more expensive for you. I am determined to turn Canada into a natural resources superpower. That's what we should be. Woo. Last week I proposed to end equalization. We should end this dependency and encourage provinces to become independent and develop their natural resources. I'm interested in housing. I know that housing is very challenging to many young Canadians. I don't want to give up on their dreams. There's some steps we can take. I'm going to double the first-time home buyers deduction to $70,000 from $35,000, index it to inflation. I'm going to divest ourselves of all federal land. I'm going to sell it. Okay, if it's not protected, if it's not environmentally sensitive, we're going to sell it. We can use it to shore up our books, and putting land on the market will decrease the price of housing. And most importantly, the best thing you can do to encourage the creation of more housing is to build roads and transportation. And we stop building in our country because we don't have the stomach for anything anymore. But I do. I've shown courage on difficult files, and this will be one of them. I would like to start building infrastructure in our country again. That's the best thing you can do to encourage the construction of housing. I'm interested in privacy. I like to tell a story that a couple of months ago I had to upgrade my phone, and Adobe Acrobat told me that I can't open my PDF unless I let Adobe Acrobat see all the files on my phone. And this is now happening with new applications. They tell you that they want to see your entire phone. And I think it's just crazy. Why? And the question of whether we have anything to hide or not is not the right question. It's our lives, our pictures, our messages, our contacts, our pictures. And Canadians should not be made to give up their privacy against their will. And that's what's happening right now. Again, I love small, medium, big business, but I am not going to permit companies that have a huge market share to the point where I can't exist if I can't do day-to-day work if I can't open a PDF. But that does not mean that I should be doing something against my will. And so this is a pure antitrust matter. I'm going to deal with it through the Bureau of Competition. I'm very, very determined to restore Canadians' right to privacy. Finally, I'm interested in children with autism. It's something that I know very well. Some of you may know that a couple of years ago I almost got kicked out of caucus before COVID. I did some work and wrote a major report on Doug Ford's and Lisa MacLeod's proposed autism reform. When the plan was about to go, they gave it to the autism panel for review, and it was on a Wednesday, and on Friday it ended up in the Globe and Mail. And unfortunately, because of politics, my plan was not fully accepted, but at least the disastrous plan that Doug wanted to go with was also derailed. I don't care about politics. What happened? They didn't kick me out at the time. They said, Roman, leave town for 2 weeks. Don't talk to me again. That's what happened. This time they kicked me out by text message after 90 minutes. Talk about a bad breakup, you know? By text message. So Yeah, children with autism, many Canadians don't know, we have an epidemic of children with autism in Canada. Every 50th child is diagnosed on the spectrum, and it's even higher for boys. And treatment can make a very material difference in a child's life. And it's not just the right thing to do, it's the fiscally responsible thing to do, because I would much rather invest in treatment early on in life than in housing and income replacement and supports for the rest of life. So this is why we've introduced our National Autism Plan. It designates it as a healthcare priority, not a social services file. It actually encourages provinces to go towards treatment rather than trampolines and care coordinators and whatever other ways the government finds a way to waste money and not fund treatment of autism. To go back to what brought us together, I have to win this race. We have to win this race for leadership of the Conservative Party, because we have to shake up the Conservative Party. We have to ask them, where the hell have you been for the last 2 years? Why did you not stand up for Canadians against passports, against mandates, against lockdowns, against the mental health pandemic that was perpetuated, especially among children? Why did you not protect us against our cancer screenings missed or surgeries delayed? Why did you not speak out until the truckers came to town, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's the culture that I'm going to instill in this party that used to traditionally pride itself on standing on principle. That's what distinguished it from the Liberals, right? That's what they used to say. So, and that's what I vow to you. We're gonna do what we believe is right, and we're gonna say what we believe, even when it's unpopular. And finally, I have to restore democracy, and I have to get us out of the COVID response. And some of my competitors, my opponents, and those in the media, they say, oh, he's just running on COVID and lockdowns, and those are behind us.
Yeah.
Really, like 20% of Canadians are still treated like second-class citizens behind us, and even if somehow, all right, we have the trauma. I have a friend who's a grade 3 teacher, and she told me that her grade 3 class is reading at a grade 1 level.
Yeah.
Like, how are we gonna? This is a nightmare. I have a lot of friends that own small businesses that have been wiped out. I have friends who suffered because someone in the family was diagnosed with cancer, but diagnosed late. I have a friend who's an ER physician. He tells me he's never diagnosed so much cancer in his ER, because you're not supposed to diagnose cancer in the emergency room. So we have a lot to work through. But even if somehow, God willing, we were all through this acute phase of what's happening, what happens after that? What happens if our detractors, if our opponents say lockdowns work, the passport saved lives, then they're going to justify all these methods that they've been using on Canadians, these unprecedented tactics, the segregation, the psychological manipulation, the censorship, and that cannot happen. This narrative has to collapse. We have to call it for what it is, because if somehow these methods are justified, then we will never fully get our democracy back, and we'll never fully go back to normal. And those are propositions that I find unacceptable. We have to insist on our democracy back in full, and we have to go back to normal in full. Nothing else will do. That's it. That's why I'm here. Thank you. Okay, I will take some, unlike some of my opponents, I take questions. I have no difficulty taking questions, even if it's what my favorite song is, like it was the other day during the debate. It's kind of funny. So before I take some questions, I just want to ask, a lot of people want to know what they can do to support me. And the only thing I really ask you to do is give me your vote, and give me as many votes as you can get us. And that means understanding how this election works. This election is inside the Conservative Party of Canada. It's between a bunch of Conservatives that want to succeed Erin O'Toole. And you can't vote in the leadership of the Conservative Party unless you register with the Conservative Party and pay them $15. So the way to do this, instead of just going to existing members, you attract new members. So we need to attract the freedom movement, all democracy-loving Canadians, everyone who's worried about where we're going with this. If you have friends in British Columbia and Quebec and the Maritimes, reach out to them and say, look, there's this Roman guy, you may have seen him. He's like a nice guy and he tries really, really hard. It is how it is. And we've done this many times. Erica's here who's been so good to us.
Can I just say one thing, Roman?
Sure.
When I phoned Cattleman's from BC, we started grassroots movement out west. But I said to all my friends in BC, I phoned them up and I said, how are you? How are you looking forward to living in Canada? They go, what do you mean? And I said, well, come September, you're going to be living, there's a social credit system. Unless you like living in China, I said, I've got a solution. And that's, I keep it right to the point. I say, unless you want to live in communism come September, I said, we've only got one other option. And get them on the phone with Roman. Everybody knows 10 people. I said, everybody can sign up 10 people.
Exactly.
Right? Everybody, and those 10 sign up 10, and you know network marketing principles, but it works.
And how do you sign up? You go to joinroman.ca. That's it. I mean, it's even easier, joinroman.ca/now, but you don't even need to do that. It's just joinroman.ca. You'll see a thing that says register to vote. You pay the Conservatives $15. That's how they raise money. I know that a lot of you have given up on the Conservative Party. I'm very mad at them too.
You're more reason than us. How about all politicians?
I'm very mad. The political class failed you. All politicians failed you. And it's because potentially that's the first question. Because potentially they put themselves first. They want to keep their seat. If they're federal, then they want to keep their seat so they can get their pension. Who knows? But what I propose to you is, if I'm blessed to lead this party, I'm going to have breakfast with every single MP, and I'm going to put an option before them. If you're going to continue playing the game, then go do something else. Go do something else. But it works in reverse, because I do believe that there are some decent people left. They're just very afraid because they don't have cover from leadership. And if you bring good leadership and you say, look, if you want to help people and if you want to do the right thing, and you want to stand up to the left-wing radical cancel culture that looks to end all of this, then I'm going to stand behind you. I got your back. There are good people in government. We need to empower them to do the right thing. I will do that.